Hi everyone, and welcome to this penultimate video in the series on show jumping biomechanics. My name is Tim Warden. In last week's video, we went over the fundamentals of the takeoff. This week, we're going to touch on how certain approaches as well as specific horse rider characteristics will affect the jump. So let's get to it.
There are a number of factors that will influence the takeoff distance and trajectory of a jump. It is important to understand that the optimal takeoff distance for a jump is not absolute. It will depend on the speed you are carrying on approach, the anatomy of the horse, the jump design, characteristics of the ring, and so on. The takeoff needs to be updated based on these parameters to ensure a successful jump. Of course, takeoff distances will have a major impact on the mechanics of the jump. In this image, I am showing a hypothetical correct takeoff distance for this horse and rider. The orange arrow shows the trajectory of the horse's body. The green arrow denotes the direction of the ground reaction force as the horse pushes off the ground. Now, if everything were to stay the same in terms of jump height, approach speed, and so on, but the horse and rider arrive too close to the jump, the horse will need to adjust the takeoff trajectory to become more steep. That is, the takeoff angle must increase. If the takeoff trajectory did not change, the horse's front end would, of course, contact the rail. Also note that the angle of the green arrow becomes more upright, indicating the horse pushes more vertically to get into the air with the hind end. The opposite situation would be if the horse is too far from the jump. Here, the horse will need to adjust the takeoff trajectory to become flatter. If the takeoff trajectory did not change, the horse would not be able to cover the width of the jump, and either the front end, body, or hind end would land on the rail. The issues with a flatter jump are twofold. First, the horse will not go as high in the air, which will of course limit the height that can be jumped. Second, the angle the hind end pushes against the ground will be shallow, as denoted by the green arrow. Add this shallow push angle to the fact that the horse's body will be more forward with respect to where the forces are applied against the ground, and you end up with a situation where the horse will under-rotate in the air. And in this scenario, the low angle of force application tends to cause the hind end to drag in the air, so having a vertical or the front rail of an oxer with the hind end becomes more likely. Additionally, if the takeoff distance is long and the horse and rider try to move up to shorten that distance, this will increase downward forces and the horse's body will lower too much, collapse, and slow. It sort of looks like the horse lands in a heap at the base of the jump. Then it takes a lot more force and energy for the horse to dig itself out of this hole to jump up into the air. Slower speeds and smaller jumps will be associated with takeoff distances that are closer to that jump. Additionally, less experienced horses and riders will tend to take off closer to the jump as well. Another point to consider is that when jumping at slower speeds, the horse's legs do not need to be as quick and tight as the horse has more time to get its body up into the air before it would contact a rail. One of the problems with always training at slower speeds at home is that the horse and rider, by the very nature of the task, will be taking off closer to the jump and the horse can jump with looser technique while still successfully clearing that jump. And I believe this becomes your trained frame of reference and technique. So when you do need to jump at ring speed, or even more so at jump-off speed, it can be hard to adapt the new spacing and technique needed since you have consistently trained to take off closer to the jump at home. The faster the approach speed, the lower the trajectory or takeoff angle will be. This is because as the horse and rider bring more speed to the base of the jump, the peak forces the horse would need to generate in order to set a steep takeoff angle would be impossible for most horses to create. Additionally, the faster the horse is traveling, the faster the stride rate will be, meaning that stance times beneath the hooves will shorten. To set a steeper takeoff angle requires long stance times to load the structures of the leg to generate vertical lift. If the ground contact time is too short, then insufficient force will be generated to propel the body up into the air. Conversely, slow-moving jumpers will need a steeper takeoff angle. If they were to jump flatter with little speed behind them, they simply would not travel high and far enough in the air to cross the jump. Due to their reduced speed, slow-moving jumpers need to position themselves optimally at the base of the jump to load the hind end and then rapidly extend the hind joints to launch the body up into the air. The height of the horse also plays a role. Shorter horses will need to take off further away from the jump in order to give their bodies more time to rise up into the air to clear the height and width of a jump. There are a number of things you can look for at the base of the jump. First, weaker horses will be low with their bodies and slow at the base of the jump. These horses lack the strength to generate stiffness at ground contact and cannot fully take advantage of the stretch-shortening cycle. Instead, when these horses go to produce large amounts of force, their bodies will look like they collapse as they work to push hard into the ground to stretch the muscle and tendon of the front legs before slowly rotating backward to load the hind end and jump up. Slower, less powerful horses will also tend to place the front legs further out in front at the base of the jump, as again this gives them more time to load the structures of the leg to generate the forces needed to jump up into the air. Stronger, more powerful horses can generate these forces in shorter periods of time, thus they don't need their legs in contact with the ground for as long. Another thing to consider is that the length of the front legs and speed of the front legs will also influence the jump. Better jumping horses have a highly flexed front end for speed. All horses will slow their speed at the base of the jump, but some slow more than others. If the legs are placed way out in front, the horse will block its body and kill horizontal speed. So either the horse will really rotate backward to load the hind end and power up into the air, or these are the horses that will really struggle with width. Conversely, if you have a horse that does not plant far enough in front of the body, and thus does not slow its body enough, they will rotate forward instead of rotating backward to load the hind end, and will be unable to get up into the air. Thus, you need a balanced horse and rider at the base of the jump. If the horse has a mechanically efficient canter and is balanced, then the hooves should automatically go to the right spot, if it is a good jumping horse. So if you are evaluating a young horse, this can be something to look for. One last point on technique. The more manufactured the horse's jumping technique is, i.e., the more the rider or trainer tries to change what is natural for a horse, then the more it can fall apart and unravel in the ring. In training, for any sport, the key is to find ways to show the body how to move efficiently. Efficiency drives everything, so it is important to exploit this. Finally, remember that jerky movements are more likely to cause injury. Smooth movements are what we want, and they will be safer. Now for the key points. Different takeoff distances and approach speeds will necessitate changes to the takeoff mechanics. Remember that slower speeds, smaller jumps, and less experienced horses and riders will have closer takeoff distances. Strength, anatomy, and rider inputs also influence takeoff mechanics, and sound canter and takeoff mechanics determine the efficiency and height of a jump.
So as you can see, each jump is highly individualized, and the outcome will depend on how the horse and rider execute the approach. Additionally, the horse's anthropometrics and strength also have a major impact. Next week, in the final video of the series, I will touch on the flight trajectory, the landing, and the move off after the jump. Have a great week, and as always, please email me or reach out on Instagram if you have any comments or questions.